I hope you'll put your hands together and join me in welcoming Kendall Scudder.
Thank you so much. I was so excited to get to come here today because it's like getting to come back home. So I grew up on College Street, and you know, she already told you my backstory, but I decided to run last year when I saw that Senator Hall filed a school voucher bill. It's one of my big pet issues. I am a huge opponent to school vouchers. In fact, I'm the only person in this race that will tell you this unequivocally. I will never, under any circumstance, support school vouchers. Period. End of story, or no matter what they call them, right? Because I believe that school vouchers are a thinly veiled attempt to privatize our public schools and to tear them apart brick by brick. They discriminate against rural kids and kids of color and kids with disabilities, and they come to you with nothing but problems, no solutions. They don't help you with anything on transportation. They're bad news bears, guys. And I can't wrap my head around why someone would spend so much time trying to push these school vouchers down our throats, particularly when you represent a rural community, right? And I think it's universally understood that school vouchers hurt rural communities. Let's say that a kid gets a school voucher, where are they even going to take it, right? And it's not even the full value of what they would need to be able to go to the school. So, I could go on tirades about vouchers, I'll spare you. So, after Bob Hall filled out his school voucher bill, I said, oh no. And we hadn't run a Democrat in this area in a long time. And I think it's really important that the people of this district are able to see a strong advocate for public education. So, I jumped into this race, and after I jumped into this race, we started seeing more bills that Bob Hall was writing. He wrote a bill that would have eliminated ESL in public schools. That's really bad for teachers who aren't bilingual, right? It effectively outsources your job to teachers who are bilingual. I think it's unacceptable. He wrote a bill to eliminate school breakfasts. I mean, guys, who are we? And how is this in line with our values and who we are? That's not what I learned growing up here. That best of luck to you, kid. Sorry you can't afford your breakfast, but you're on your own, right? You know, I grew up in a community where when somebody had a debilitating illness, we all pitched in and bought signs to put in our yard to fundraise for them, right? And we still do that because we look out for our neighbors and take care of each other. And that's not what I've seen coming from folks like Bob Hall. So, a little bit more about where I stand on some education issues. I oppose the A through F grading system. I think that school grading system sets you up to fail, and it's a system that was set up without any educators or school administrators in the room. I think we should scrap it entirely, and we should allow superintendents, school administrators, and teachers in the room to develop the new grading system. And people say, Kendall, be specific about what you want that grading system to be. I can't do that to you because I am not a career educator, and I have no business doing that, right? I am tired of these politicians in Austin thinking that they know better than you, okay? So, I want you to sit down and create this grading system, educational professionals, so that we can sit down and really have a conversation about changing the way that we view education in Texas, okay? I think we should be reducing classroom sizes and cutting standardized tests. Now, everybody has been talking about cutting standardized tests for years, but they don't actually do it. And I was actually talking about this just a second ago with someone about why I suspect that they don't do it. We have given $1.5 billion to standardized testing companies since 2012. And they have political action committees that give money to people like Senator Hall and Mrs. Birkin, who you'll hear from later today. And so they both will tell you that they oppose standardized tests. But when Cindy comes here today, you need to ask her what she has done to reduce standardized tests. The answer is nothing, because you have seen the standardized tests continuously get shoved down our throats and increase in volume. And I think as a show of good faith, we should start by eliminating them from teachers' evaluations to show that we mean business. So, I think that we should do our part to make sure that kids with disabilities are able to get the services that they need, and that the teachers that are teaching those are appropriately accredited and have the assistance that they need to be able to teach those classes. We've seen these weird arbitrary caps that they've been putting on those programs, and they are just that, they are arbitrary. And I don't think that they're doing the service to our communities that they should be doing. So, when we get to Austin, there are people that are there that are champions for just about every issue, right? You're gonna have like a pinpoint person that's your go-to immigration person. That's your go-to person on women's health. But there doesn't seem to be anybody who is our go-to person for education issues, right? Where is our education champion? Who is the person that's gonna put their neck out for issues that are important to them on education? And that's what I'm ready to be. It's the reason that I ran for office. I worked at Dairy Queen on Main Street in high school to help my family pay bills when I was in high school. And I worked 3 jobs when I was in college to help put myself through college. And I was a first-generation traditional college student. And now I'm the manager of community services for one of the largest nonprofits in North Texas. And I would have had no opportunity to do that if it weren't for the public schools in Silver Springs. And for the great work that people like Patsy Bolton, who was my superintendent, were doing whenever I was there. I would have no opportunities. And in a Texas run by Bob Hall and Cindy Burkett, they see privatized schools. And they see an opportunity where folks should have to pay to be able to get a quality education. That's where there's a huge difference between the two of us. I believe that every child, no matter where they're from, no matter what they look like, deserves the opportunity for a quality public education. And that's just where we're going to have to differ, I guess. Ms. Burkett is going to come in here after me, and I'm a straight shooter, guys. I'm going to tell it how it is. We had an education forum in Mesquite at the beginning of December, end of November. And me, Bob Hall, Cindy Burkett were all there. And we had another one on the calendar. We were supposed to be there in January, where we were all going to meet and talk. After that event, Bob and Cindy suddenly canceled their appearance at our education forum in Canton on the 20th. And Cindy does not like to have to answer questions from you about her record. And I hope that when she's in here later today, you hold her to task for what her record is. Cindy Burkett has voted in favor of $6 billion in public education cuts. In 2013, that legislature that gutted our public schools, y'all remember that. It was the $5.7 billion cuts. Today, we have 250,000 more students and 8,000 less teachers, okay? Cindy voted in favor of that. And in 2000, and in the legislature in 2015, she voted in favor of a $400 million public education cut. In the same session that she voted in favor of a tax cut to yacht owners and private jet owners. What does that say about our values? I believe that our budgets reflect our values. Don't tell me what your values are, show me your budget and I will tell you what your values are, right? And when you look at this budget and you see them gutting our public schools, but they're able to pay for huge tax cuts and tax breaks and corporate welfare for oil companies and for folks like Walmart, I don't think that that is conducive with who we are. It tells me that that is something that they value more than our kids. It tells me that that is something that they value more than our schools. And it tells me that that is something that they value more than our future. So, with that being said, I hope that you're able to see that I have a lot of passion for our public schools. And I want to take the time to answer questions from y'all and kind of have a dialogue because these types of events are helping me learn a lot. Because, spoiler alert, I'm going to have a learning curve, right? I'm a little young, so I need to hear from you. And before I take a question, I just realized I didn't talk to you about TRS. Can I do that right quick? I think that what the legislature did to TRS this year was immoral, is unconscionable, and it is borderline criminal. And I can't wrap my head around why a bunch of politicians in Austin who made promises to you, who told you you planned your whole life around this being your retirement plan, are deciding to rip the rug right out from under your feet because they may have made questionable decisions in the past. That's not your fault, right? If we are ever going to talk about reforming TRS, we can talk about it for incoming teachers, which I don't want to do, but I mean, that could be a discussion to be had, but not with people who are currently on the system that have been planning their lives around it. I'll give you an example of how that irritates me. So I went into student loan debt up to my eyeballs to go to college, in addition to working, because that's 2010 for you, right? And they have a program where your student loans can get forgiven if you work for a nonprofit for 10 years. And so instead of going into the private sector, I worked for a nonprofit. Could have made a lot more money going into the private sector, stayed with a nonprofit, service to the community, but also can get my own help. And now the federal government is talking about getting rid of that program. And so I've spent 6 years of my life planning for what was going to happen for me, and they're trying to rip the rug out from under me. I can't imagine if I had spent 30 years of my life like you have and having the legislature rip the rug out from under you too. So I can relate to you on that. I support protecting defined benefits, and I think that there are ways that we can pay for it by closing tax loopholes for major corporations. Our lieutenant gubernatorial candidate, Mike Collier, is an accountant. He has found places in the budget where we can close tax loopholes for massive corporations and save $5.2 billion. I believe that we can trust the federal government and border security and work alongside of them so that we can save some of those funds that we spend to secure a federal border and invest that in our public schools. I believe that the money is there, and we have a moral obligation to invest in our teachers and in our public schools. So, now I want to take questions for you. Yes, ma'am.